Unfortunately, the young child was found a few hours ago, and his body was recovered.
A tragic end to a Sunday swim. The body of a 14-year-old boy has been recovered from Lake Ontario. Good evening. A pair of friends spending a Sunday afternoon at the beach turned into a desperate search after one of them went into the water and never came out.
This morning, police found the body of the 14-year-old whose friend had been unable to save him. CTV's Sean Leithong is live tonight with the latest. And Sean, you spoke with the family of that friend.
That's right. The father of that friend tells me that his son is now traumatized. Imagine seeing your friend go into the water, trying to save him, only for him never to resurface.
A search along the shoreline at Woodbine Beach for a missing 14-year-old boy has ended.
Unfortunately, the young child was found a few hours ago, and his body was recovered.
Idris Halai came to the shoreline this morning. He says that his son was with the victim yesterday.
My son and the victim actually both were best friends. They just came here actually to because the weather was good, so they thought that's just gonna go, and I strictly told my son that not to go in water because it's in freezing cold.
It was late afternoon, and according to Halai, the victim decided to go for a swim, becoming submerged a short time later and never resurfacing. His friend and another passerby both jumping in the water to try and help. Both were unable.
He's feeling that he could have done little more to get his friend back. He's just crying, and yeah, we are all in a deep shock. He was, more than a friend, he was like his brother actually.
Halai says the boys have known each other for 5 years and had been studying together before going to the beach. It was around 6 p.m. when police got the call for potential drowning. The search lasting for hours into the night and picking up again first thing this morning. 5 fire trucks, probably like 6 cop cars, a boat in the water, and then a lot of people, like probably 5 or 6 people in the water. I don't know if they were dredging or what they were doing, but and then a lot of people on the shore as well by the rocks over there. According to police, the body was found shortly after 9 this morning near the rocks where the boy had entered the water yesterday afternoon. Nice and calm as it is, there's a riptide, especially on that side. It's pretty dangerous, and it's known to people who live here. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of signage as well that says that. While family and friends of the victim are heartbroken.
His son's, he's been all night telling me that, what can we do? Can we go and do something for him?
Facing the difficult reality that there's nothing that can be done.
Idris Halai said that at about 5:30 yesterday, his son called him, assuring him that they were not going into water. And then a little while later, he called him back and saying he had to go in. There was a problem. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. Toronto police have now laid charges in connection with an incident that saw one of their officers stabbed and led to the suspect being shot. It happened Friday outside of a Tim Hortons near College in Lansdowne. Police say they were responding to a call for a person in distress. Footage obtained by CTV News shows 2 officers trying to apprehend a man with their guns drawn. But the officer and the accused were rushed to hospital, both of them. They both survived their injuries. 27-year-old Gabriel Escaro is facing 10 charges, including attempted murder, aggravated assault, and assault with a weapon.
There are calls for change after a rash of gun violence in the city's northwest.
After a spate of shootings, including one that left a man dead yesterday, some are asking police and elected officials to do more. CTV's Mike Walker is live tonight with more details. Mike.
Nathan, Michelle, this latest homicide was a brazen daytime shooting. Residents we've been speaking with today expressing safety concerns community advocates tell us they're hearing a lot more of, and they're calling on all levels of government and police to do more to address gun violence. Evidence markers are scattered across the road in the Weston neighborhood following the city's latest homicide, a brazen daytime shooting that left one man dead and the community reeling.
It's concerning at any time, especially during the day, especially on a nice day when people are out walking.
It's very disturbing when we see these things happening all around us.
Shots rang out just before 5 p.m. Sunday near Lawrence Avenue West and Ralph Street. Police say 32-year-old Mohamud Abdi Duale was pronounced dead at the scene. As police continued to search for the suspect and collect evidence, a nearby school was switched to virtual learning today.
There's a school here, there's a school over there, so I'm more frightened for the kids.
I have lived here most of my life, and this is the first few years that I've been nervous to walk around the streets here.
The latest incident in a rash of gun violence in the city's north and west ends. On Thursday, a 16-year-old boy was shot in the Shepherd and Jane area and suffered serious injuries. Last month, a 39-year-old Thornhill man was shot and killed near Dufferin and Finch. In February, police responded to 2 separate shootings in the Jane and Driftwood area in the span of 24 hours that left 1 man dead. And in late February, 2 men were shot dead in the Hickory Tree Road and Weston area, not far from this latest homicide scene. Community advocates sounding the alarm.
We cannot ignore this. This calls for concern.
Pastor Delroy Sherman is with Young Lives Matter and says families are in distress. The advocacy group is calling for more action from all levels of government and police to address gun violence, including further strengthening the bail system.
There must be a stiff penalty. It should not be a revolving door, because that's what's happening.
According to the latest Toronto police statistics, so far this year there have been 117 gun-related incidents in the city, with 46 people killed or injured, up from 66 incidents from the same time last year.
Right now I'm calling for a summit with leaders, community leaders, try to how we can able to fix this problem.
The local city councillor says police have increased its neighborhood patrols, but more must be done. Currently pushing for a community town hall meeting with the chief to address concerns.
I've been getting calls from my constituents and they don't feel safe. It's not just a police issue. I think we all should be involved in, including businesses and community. I think we all have to work together.
In the meantime, the city has deployed its community crisis response team to support the community. And Councillor Nunziata tells us she's hoping to have that meeting with the police chief sometime over the next couple of weeks. As for this investigation, there's no suspect description at this time. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Ahead on CTV News tonight, waiting for justice. An Ontario family finds out there will be yet another delay when it comes to going to a trial in the death of their loved one.
But first, outside we go. A wonderful start to our week weather-wise. Solid dose of sunshine paired with above seasonal temperatures. This is a live shot right now, looking at the lake, and very comfortable conditions. If you have any plans outside, let's bring in Jessica Smith with more detail. Jess.
Nice and sunny out there, but it's a little breezy. We have a northwesterly wind, a little gusty right now. So if you are heading out and you're on the sunny side of the street, it's quite nice. And the shade is still a little fresh. A layer is probably needed, but it is a beautiful start to the week. Any active weather staying north of us, kind of in that streamline from Huntsville right across towards Ottawa. Now, it is comfortable to spend some time outside, patio weather if you're brave. We're at 18 through Windsor, 16 in Hamilton, 15 in Peterborough, 15 as well through Niagara. Towards the island in Pearson, we're comfortably still sitting at about 16, but it's that breeze that's a little fresh. Coming up, a full look at your long-range forecast right now. Back over to Michelle.
Thank you, Jess. Coming up on CTV News at 6, a dramatic scene downtown over the noon hour as fire breaks out in a building on Bremner. We'll have those details in moments.
It's good news for GO Transit riders. The province says hundreds of trips will be added to the schedule.
There will also be changes made to the Up Express in order to get riders to and from the airport faster. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live with the details. Siobhan.
Well, Michelle, the goal here is to get, the Premier says, is to get people off the road, break up gridlock, get you back to your friends and family faster. But some of those changes, including that change to the Up Express, is drawing some criticism.
It's being touted as the biggest expansion of GO train service in over a decade, a 15% bump.
We're adding more than 300 new weekly trips, supporting two-way all-day GO service on some of the province's busiest train routes.
By the end of April, on the Lakeshore East and West lines, trains will come every 15 minutes, weekend afternoons and evenings. Kitchener will see trains every half hour in some weekday periods. There'll be new evening runs on the Stouffville line and more rush hour trips between Milton and Union Station.
With it be more frequent, to be like, come on, it's about time.
It would make my life a lot easier with more frequent service.
I think 15% more is great, but I would go more, I'd go 25.
There will be a tweak to the Up Express rail link to the country's biggest airport.
Every second Up Express train will soon be non-stop between Union Station and Pearson Airport.
While it wasn't designed to be a commuter route,
the Up has become an integrated part of transit in Toronto, with lots of people getting on and off at Dundas West and Weston, and the fact that the government's going to take that away from them just hurts transit in the city.
The Transportation Minister's office insists commuters will be covered by service increases on the Kitchener line on the two stops in the middle of the Up route. With the provincial by-election in Milton about 2 weeks away, the Premier's calling on the feds to join his government.
In a true cost-sharing partnership to build a fully separated passenger rail line so we can finally make two-way, all-day GO train service a reality here in Milton.
The opposition thinks the Premier's wasting time.
I don't think those kinds of announcements hold a lot of weight. I think it's a little bit of fluff.
He's done it in other places. He hasn't had to wait for the federal government.
Ontario has promised to bring two-way, all-day GO rail to Milton by 2031.
We heard a development late this afternoon from the government that talks to this collaboration between the Ontario and federal governments. It surrounds Highway 413. The Ford government has reached a working group, or an understanding on a working group with the feds to deal with concerns around environmental issues and endangered species that will allow Highway 413 to continue. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. The union representing nearly 12,000 frontline TTC workers is taking its first step toward strike action. ATU Local 113 says it has filed a request with the Ministry of Labor to have a conciliator appointed as negotiations continue. The union says the TTC is refusing to address key priorities, including job security, wages, and benefits.
We know the value of our work. Unfortunately, the TTC are taking paths that actually undermine the value of that work. The TTC is not moving off the principles of things like contracting out. They're removing good in our union jobs in order to have precarious work done by low-income individuals and having people that are new immigrants being exploited. They're now looking at things like cross-boundary, where they're going to have other agencies deliver Toronto Transit, undermining the fare collection of Toronto Transit and further alienating people that depend on Toronto Transit.
TTC workers are legally able to strike again after a court ruling last year struck down the province's designation of TTC as an essential service.
Long-term construction is now underway on the Gardiner between Dufferin and Strawn.
We've placed the traffic barriers down to close the left lane, so along both the east and westbound direction. And what we're doing behind those barriers is we're beginning to do work to remove the center median, and that will let us start work in building the new bridge, essentially in that area.
The eastbound lane is already closed, while the westbound closure was originally scheduled to happen last week, but was postponed until yesterday due to the weather. There will be intermittent overnight closures of a second lane in either direction. The lane reductions are expected to remain in place until at least mid-2027. Officials say the highway will reopen briefly during the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Quite the sight as crews battled a two-alarm fire at a high-rise overlooking Maple Leaf Square this afternoon. The flames broke out at a condo building on York Street near Bremner just before 12:30 p.m. It spread to a balcony, and police briefly warned people about falling glass. Toronto Fire says the unit sustained extensive damage, but no one was hurt. They say it's not believed to be suspicious.
A strike by academic workers at York University could soon be over. CUPE says a tentative deal was reached with the university last night. More than 3,000 instructors, teaching assistants, and graduate assistants have been off the job since the end of February. Wages and job stability are the main sticking points.
Money is going to be a hot button issue. Bill 124 had our wage increases capped at 1% for the last 3 years, and this is during a time of record high inflation. So our members before the strike were already living paycheck to paycheck, some members having to rely on food banks. To address this sort of economic inequality or injustice that's at place, it's going to take a long time to fully to make up for.
Details of the tentative deal have not been released. Workers are expected to hold a ratification vote this week.
An Ontario family that has waited 3 years for a trial in the violent death of a loved one has just been told they're going to have to wait almost another year.
As CTV's John Woodward reports, it's not the only case facing major delays in Ontario courts.
My life has literally been on hold for 3 years.
On hold ever since Lois Brettel heard her brother Nathaniel had gone missing from his Etobicoke rooming house in 2021. 2 officers that went looking for him were stabbed and sent to hospital, while police looking for the 57-year-old eventually turned up his remains at a landfill near London, Ontario. Charged in the case, Brettel's former roommate Ahmed El Fark, who's in custody now. Bertel's brother and sister had been hoping for justice in a trial to start April 29th at Toronto Superior Court. But last week got word the trial had been delayed almost another full year to March 2025.
And now with another year thrown on top of it, I'm not in a good place.
The first date didn't work because of a scheduling conflict with one lawyer, but the soonest next date for a full trial was almost a year ahead in March.
A year out is absolutely unacceptable.
The Ontario NDP's justice critic says it's not a problem of too few courtrooms, it's too few staff to fill them.
When we have a court system that's underfunded, under-resourced, understaffed, then these problems are going to persist, and which is why we now have record high backlogs.
Another issue, lack of judges themselves. Several Toronto judges have had to throw out serious charges recently for taking too long and have blamed the federal government's slow appointments. A spokesperson for the federal justice minister said 111 judges have been appointed to superior courts across Canada in the last 12 months, and there are new measures to streamline the process, saying all actors in the justice system and all levels of government need to work to ensure justice is timely. Our government is doing its part and will continue to do so with urgency.
I'm still fighting and I will fight, but I don't want to have to wait another year. I can't.
Lois Bertel says it's been very hard to make it this far. She doesn't want her family's chance at justice to be pushed back again. John Woodward, CTV News.
Thunder Bay's police chief and the chair of the police service board held a news conference today in the aftermath of the arrest of former chief Sylvie Hoth. At one point during the briefing, things heated up, prompting this from the lawyer for Thunder Bay police officers who came forward with human rights complaints.
The former board did bring complaints forward to the OCP. They did bring...
That's not true. I'm sorry. Chantal, with respect, please allow the press conference. I'm leaving. That's not true. You should apologize to these service members. To date, the board and the chief of police are supporting continuing defending the complainants in HRTO. They are indemnifying them. They have continued since their presence to file pleadings in the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, correspondence to my office, calling these people liars, calling me a liar.
Hoth was suspended in 2022 after the Ontario Civilian Police Commission brought misconduct charges against her.
Tomorrow is a big day for Canada's finance minister. She'll deliver the federal budget containing billions of dollars in spending.
But today, Christopher Freeland found some time to shop for shoes in a tradition that often hints at what's in store on Budget Day. CTV's Michael Couture reports.
Well, the theme of the budget and the minister's footwear often go together in lockstep. Christopher Freeland bought shoes from a Canadian company run by the same type of people targeted in tomorrow's budget, millennials and Gen Z.
The leather we use is always leather that is closed from the factory.
Romy and Miriam McGuire pride themselves on selling high-fashion footwear that is fair and accessible. That theme has been woven into many pre-budget announcements by the federal government, and it's expected to continue as younger Canadians deal with the affordability crisis.
They now feel like middle-class stability is out of reach. We need to meet this moment.
The last 2 weeks have seen a series of pre-budget announcements across the country. There have been $38 billion worth of spending commitments on affordability and housing. Of that money, $17 billion are loan-based programs. Some economists believe loans help keep the deficit in check, but so could some kind of tax hike.
Increasing taxes on corporations, things like excess profit taxes like they've used in other parts of the world.
While some estimate the federal deficit will surpass the target of $40 billion, Finance Minister Christopher Freeland says her government will stay on target. So many are waiting to see the fancy footwork she'll use to keep the numbers in line. Michael Couture, CTV News, Ottawa.
Wildfires are a growing threat to Canadian towns and cities. And with that, the federal government is increasing spending to train urban firefighters. Ottawa is giving $800,000 to the International Association of Firefighters. That is double what was spent last year when 25 instructors trained more than 300 firefighters in Chilliwack, Kamloops, and Grand Prairie. About 1 in 10 Canadians live in areas near combustible forests, And the latest forecast suggests we could be in for a repeat of last year's record-breaking wildfire season.
Some Ontario residents are receiving their first Canada carbon rebates today. The first installment of the rebate landed in bank accounts or was sent out by mail. The payments range from $190 to $450, depending on the province. People in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the 4 Atlantic provinces also got the rebate today. Only residents who filed their taxes by March 15th will get the money at this point. Anyone who filed after that date can expect to see the money by mid-May or later. The rebate offsets the federal government's carbon tax. The parliamentary budget officer says about 80% of Canadians get back more from the rebates than they pay.
Despite calls from Canada and other allies for restraint, Israel vowed to respond to an Iranian attack on the weekend.
Israel's military chief says the country is still considering its steps after the attack involving hundreds of drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. CTV's Adrian Gabriel reports.
A proxy war no more, as stability across the Middle East now hangs by the thinnest of threads.
We are urging them as friends to think with head as well as heart, to be smart as well as tough.
Israel facing mounting pressure from Western allies not to seek revenge after Iran sent more than 300 drones, cruise, and ballistic missiles in its direction late Saturday.
We are working urgently with our allies to de-escalate the situation.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also balancing calls from members of his own government to seek swift revenge against Iran as his war cabinet convened for a second consecutive day. This comes as the Islamic Republic of Iran fired this chilling warning today. If action is taken by Israel, our actions will be more serious, proclaims this spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry.
Iran wasn't trying to inflict maximum damage, but was trying to show what it could do and have Israel think about the Islamic Republic in a less complacent way.
And now world leaders have been left to ponder the real possibility of a regional war, the likes of which we've never seen before.
Although the Middle East is thousands of miles away, it has a direct effect on our security and prosperity at home.
Israel is being told to take its successful defense of Iran's offensive as a win, as calls for calm are now echoing across the Atlantic.
I have been clear to my counterpart in Israel, please take the win and make sure that we can work together to bring back peace in the region.
One of the great fears across the region tonight is that neither side plans to concede, and therein lies the danger. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Istanbul.
Canada is imposing more sanctions on officials in Belarus.
It's important that we continue to stay strong in our promotion of values of democracy, but also protection of individuals who stand up to authoritarian regimes and continue to fight for a better world.
The sanctions are being leveled against 21 people accused of human rights violations since the country's 2020 presidential election. It was widely denounced as fraudulent. Those hit by the sanctions include prosecutors, security officials, administrators of penal colonies for protesters as well. The latest round of punitive measures were announced as Prime Minister Trudeau welcomed Belarus's exiled opposition leader to Parliament Hill.
The Trudeau government is also sanctioning those it blames for perpetuating Sudan's civil war. The conflict is in its second year. Those being penalized by Ottawa include a Sudanese paramilitary commander and a former foreign minister who led a group that opposes democratic rule. 4 companies accused of emboldening a paramilitary group and the army are being sanctioned. Donors at an international conference in Paris today pledged more than $2.1 billion in aid for Sudan.
In Australia, at least 4 people were wounded in a knife attack during a church service. A bishop was among those injured Monday night in a suburb of Sydney. Police arrested a 15-year-old male at the scene, but were forced to hold him at the church for his own safety after a crowd gathered outside and demanded the attacker be brought out. More than 100 officers were called in to deal with the unrest, and 2 were taken to hospital with injuries. Authorities have not identified the suspect or a motive. It was the second major stabbing attack in 3 days. 6 people were killed at a beachside mall in the Bondi area on Saturday.
The FBI has opened a criminal investigation into the deadly collapse of that bridge in Baltimore. The agency will look into whether any federal laws might have been broken. A cargo ship struck one of the bridge's supports on March 26th, causing the span to collapse. 6 members of a road crew were killed. The city is launching legal action to, quote, hold the wrongdoers responsible and mitigate harm to the people of Baltimore.
In New York, jury selection began in Donald Trump's so-called hush money trial.
This is political persecution. This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. And that's why I'm very proud to be here. This is an assault on our country. And it's a country that's failing.
The former U.S. president is charged with falsifying business records in order to stifle stories during the 2016 campaign about alleged payoffs to 2 women who said they had extramarital sexual encounters with him years earlier. Trump has pleaded not guilty. This is the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president.
Coming up, an inside look at cannabis cultivation. We visit a local producer offering a window into the world of Canada's legal supply and their take on the industry.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, when traveling outside of Canada, you'll have to deal with different currencies, and you have to be careful you don't get scammed. A woman who was traveling in South America was charged almost $7,000 for a short taxi ride. I'll have my reports just ahead.
A high UV index tomorrow is going to be at about a 5, so just make sure you're putting on sunscreen when you're getting yourself and the kids ready for school. The late day warm up happening once again, but we're not dealing with the same breezy conditions, so something to look forward to. Coming up, a full look at your long range forecast, including some active weather on the way. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
If you travel outside Canada, you'll have to make payments in different currencies, and you'll want to make sure you're charged the proper amount.
You'll also want to keep a close eye on your credit card at all times to avoid being caught in a scam. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Nathan and Michelle, a woman was traveling in South America and had to take a taxi from an airport in Chile. She paid with her credit card and was shocked to find out she was charged almost $7,000 for a 20-minute taxi ride.
When I got home and looked at my bank account, I almost had a heart attack. It was like, wow.
Pat Shacklady of Midland took a cruise to Antarctica with a friend in January of this year. They flew into Chile and needed to take a taxi at the airport.
So our first stop was in Santiago, Chile for a few days, and that's unfortunately where we got scammed.
Even though they had pre-booked a taxi, another company convinced them the taxi they had pre-arranged had been in an accident, and they should use their service instead.
We had offered to pay them cash. They said that no, unfortunately, cash, they didn't like to have cash in their taxi, so we could pay by credit card.
The cab driver took her credit card and she received a receipt showing she had paid 45,000 Chilean pesos, which is about $62 Canadian. But when Shacklady returned home following her trip, the driver had charged her credit card almost $7,000. When she contacted her bank, BMO, to be reimbursed, her claim was denied.
If it was just a couple of $100, I'd say, I would just figure, oh, well, I've been scammed for that. But when we're talking, almost $7,000, it's a lot of money.
The Government of Canada has a travel advisory to Chile warning of taxi scams. It says there are reports of fraud near airports. You should only use taxis in designated areas. Avoid using taxis without a meter and always check the amount on the reader before paying. CTV News reached out to BMO and they said they were reviewing Shacklady's case. She was then told the entire amount of almost $7,000 would be reimbursed back to her credit card, which was great news for her.
Over the moon, because that's an awful lot of money. Thank you, CTV, for getting involved and taking an interest in helping me with my dispute. It is a huge relief.
And it's a good habit to never let your credit card out of your sight wherever you are. That's when a scammer could try to put through additional charges without your knowledge. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, to the forecast. This is one of maybe the best Mondays we've had weather-wise in a while.
And if you look at the whole week, it's looking like the first 2 days are going to be the really good ones.
We're kind of very similar to last week. We have a few days of really nice weather. There's a little bit of sogginess in the middle, and then it gets really nice just in time for the weekend. So if you want to get outside, I know a lot of folks are thinking about golfing, maybe playing basketball outside, getting back to all those activities. You can do that today, tomorrow, and then maybe take a bit of a break. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Now, we had high pressure move in kind of midpoint through our day on Sunday. It's sticking around. It is a little breezy outside, though, so that northwesterly flow adding just some freshness out there. It's not cool, it's not cold, but if you're not on the sunnier side of the street, it is a little bit the opposite of warm, so maybe you put on a layer or two, but to be fair, we're right in that sweet spot for the seasonal mark. We're sitting at 16 still here in the city, 18 in Windsor, 9 through Ottawa, and we're still comfortable in the double digits around Thunder Bay, sitting at 15, Timmins at 11. Tonight, we're, again, just above that seasonal mark, sitting at 6. We're just below in some areas. It'll be a little cooler towards Waterloo region, sitting just around the freezing mark, and the same through Orillia. And then we're still watching for some lingering showers, very light, left over from the weekends. Now, getting into the day tomorrow, very similar to today. The difference being we're not looking at breezy winds, kind of an easterly flow to the wind, but really pleasant to spend some time outside, 2 to 3 degrees above that seasonal mark. Not a lot in the way of active weather as we head throughout the day today and tomorrow, obviously thanks to high pressure, but there is a system making its way in, sitting just south of the prairies that will bring in some rain as we head in towards that midpoint of our week. So if you have outdoor plans, get them done tomorrow if you're doing any gardening or planting. Temperature-wise tonight, again, pretty comfortable. A few light clouds out there, but overall not that bad as we wrap up our Monday. Getting into Tuesday, lots of sunshine start to finish. A light wind. If you can get outside for that little bit of fresh air, it'll be a great day to do so. Getting in towards our Wednesday, that's when that system that's sitting just south of the prairies moves in. A band of showers from Sault Ste. Marie all the way down towards London and Hamilton. For us, it's fairly dry for the early part of our commute, but we watch the showers roll in heavy at times, and that carries us right through to the early afternoon. A bit of a break between like 3 and about 7 p.m., and then another round of showers comes in. Temperature-wise, pretty spot on for seasonal, just above as we head into the day tomorrow. Then we cool down thanks to that rain. Just for the daytime high, the overnight low, we stay well above where we should be. Really no change at all. Temperature-wise throughout our Wednesday. Thursday, Friday, still some scattered showers, but by Friday afternoon, a lot of it pushes out. And then getting into the weekend, sunny, seasonal, and that carries us right through to Monday. I'll send things back over to Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. Also tonight, the impact of opioids on young adults in this country. Alarming insight from a new study that reveals a troubling loss of life. A new study shows a dramatic rise in opioid-related deaths over the past 5 years.
And as CTV's Pauline Chan tells us, it's hitting some parts of the country harder than others.
They are Canadians in the prime of their lives, in their 20s and 30s, who are dying in growing numbers because of accidental opioid overdoses.
These are young people that otherwise, if they hadn't died, would likely have gone on to live really, long, productive lives.
Canadian researchers looked at deaths from January 2019 to December 2021 as the pandemic hit high gear.
There was this immediate and significant increase in opioid-related deaths.
Accidental opioid deaths more than doubled from 3,007 to 6,222 deaths. The figures show a particularly sharp increase in the western provinces.
In Manitoba, we saw that while they didn't have the highest rates of opioid-related deaths, especially back in 2019, their rate of deaths increased 5-fold between 2019 and 2021. So an enormous and very, very rapid increase in Manitoba that was by far the highest increase that we saw across all of Canada.
And in Ontario?
Trends that are the same or worse than what we see nationally. So we are seeing that, around 1 in 3 deaths among people in their 20s and 30s are opioid related. We're seeing that these are primarily fentanyl deaths.
Toronto harm reduction worker Zoe Dodd says more must be done to treat and prevent opioid toxicities.
We have never taken the crisis seriously enough. There have been people like myself and others who have been saying that we haven't been doing enough on a federal level, on provincial level.
Gomes calculates in 2021 there were 250,000 years of life lost due to opioid-related deaths, a heavy toll for families, but also for Canada as a whole. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
It is an industry that has grown since being legalized back in 2018, but Canada's cannabis producers still face a number of hurdles.
CTV's Raheem Ladani takes us on an exclusive tour of one Ontario cannabis farm and speaks with its CEO about how he's keeping the business from going up in smoke.
The cultivation of cannabis is a meticulous process, and this licensed facility 40 minutes north of Toronto has it down to a science.
We're constantly feeding the plants water. That's what their food, that's what they're drinking.
Branded Strains Limited, this 16,000 square foot facility was built in 2019 after Canada legalized cannabis. While none of the 35 employees come from a science background, staff continue to learn on the job, and the entire operation is anything but improvised. Beginning with the mother room, a hot and humid container where plants are under intense light for 20 hours a day.
I'll cut off about 6 inches off this plant, and this will be my clone.
Sales of cannabis continue to grow across the country. Last year, they surpassed $5 billion, up from $4.5 billion in 2022. It's an 11% jump, but owner Kun Karanaker says provincial red tape makes it much harder to grow the business.
Annual fees that we have to pay for our licenses. Then we also have to pay fees for our data. Then we also have to pay excise tax, which is one of the biggest problems for this industry.
After cloning, the flowers are taken into another room where they'll spend 67 days for the actual buds to bloom.
Everything growing here with these white hairs, these are all what is going to turn into what are going to grow to be the buds. So that's basically what you're smoking.
These buds are now ready to be harvested. The workers behind me are meticulously cutting each and every bud off the flower. They'll clear this entire room in a couple of hours and then take the buds to be dried.
There are more than 1,700 cannabis stores in Ontario, and the provincial government has stricter rules than other provinces when it comes to selling. While Strains Limited is licensed to grow, it must sell its product to the Ontario Cannabis Store, which then wholesales product to private retailers.
If changes were made, it would benefit like the end user so much by actually getting more affordable product.
After 2 weeks of drying, the product is ready for package. Employees trim away the flower stems. The cannabis is weighed twice for quality control and then sealed.
This excise stamp is what we're going to be paying for duties and everything for whatever is packaged in here.
Similar to the excise tax in place for the beer industry, it's another cost to the grower. Karanaker says the Ontario Cannabis Store has shown a willingness to work with operators.
It still does have 5 years to go, or 10 or 20, that still needs to mature and have all these different changes. But as more countries come on board and start legalizing, everybody's now starting new rules.
Paving a path to cannabis longevity. Raheem Ladani, CTV News.
It was one of the worst seasons in Raptors history, and sometimes that's the way the ball bounces. But players say there is reason for optimism. They tell us why after this short break.
The evolution continues.
Mina Masood continues his small screen journey on season 2 of the series Evolving Vegan, and he'll plant himself on our couch to talk about it.
CP24 Breakfast, where Toronto gets its everything every morning.
Unfortunately, the young child was found a few hours ago, and his body was recovered.
Updating our top stories, the body of a 14-year-old boy has been pulled from Lake Ontario. Police say the boy and his friends were at the beach yesterday when he decided to go into the lake, but never came out. Police and firefighters spent the night looking for the missing boy. His body was recovered this morning.
There's no neighborhood in Toronto that's really safe anymore.
There are calls for change tonight after a spate of shootings in the city's northwest. Over the weekend, a man was shot and killed in broad daylight near Lawrence Ave and Ralph Street.
I think 15% more is great, but I'd go 25.
The province announces a boost to GO service, adding 300 new weekly trips. The province also plans to add nonstop Up Express trips between Union Station and Pearson Airport.
Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and you can download the CTV News app. And if you ever have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
Tesla's laying off staff as demand for EVs is starting to slump. BNN Bloomberg's Amber Kanwar has the latest business news.
Electric car maker Tesla is cutting 10% of its global workforce, according to multiple reports. CEO Elon Musk said that it, quote, must be done in effort to reduce costs at a time when sales are struggling. The cuts, which were telegraphed in a memo Musk wrote to employees, could amount to about 14,000 people losing their jobs. Tesla recently saw its first annual sales decline in the company's history, as demand for EVs is starting to wane. In addition to rank-and-file workers, 2 members of Tesla's 4-person executive team confirmed that they're also leaving the company. Now let's take a look at the market numbers. The Canadian dollar edged down to around $72 U.S., while oil prices slipped in the U.S. below $85 per barrel. Canadian oil prices, meanwhile, were firmer, increasing to about $71 per barrel. But it was a down day on the TSX, shedding nearly 160 points. That's the latest in business. I'm Amber Canwar in the BNN Bloomberg Newsroom.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Airline catering workers at Pearson Airport are poised to go on strike tomorrow. The union, representing more than 800 Gate Gourmet employees, says talks have broken down and a strike is inevitable. Teamsters Local 647 says a strike would mean less or no food on a quarter of all flights leaving Pearson. Wages is the key sticking point in negotiations, with the union saying its members are struggling with the cost of living.
Walmart Canada is launching a pilot program to recycle their reusable shopping bags. Customers can send in their extra or damaged blue bags to TerraCycle, which is the company that is powering the program. The bags will then be either washed and donated to charity or recycled. The recycled ones will be processed to make things like shipping pallets and outdoor furniture.
The Raptors season is over, but the team is already looking forward to getting back on track next year. Today, 2 Toronto-born players on the club spoke about how challenging this season was.
When we got back from All-Star break, won 3 in a row. We were feeling pretty good, and then dominoes just fell. Injury. Obviously, some personal stuff that no, you can't discount. You know, guys having to be away from the team. And then it was a tough stretch there. But, you know, I think when we had, you know, our guys in the lineup and we played well together.
If you just look at just, you know, all the trades and everything that happened this year, like, I think it would be hard for any team to, you know, be able to put it together like that fast, right? And then even when I got traded here, we started and I was like, okay, I'm starting to figure some things out. Boom, Pascal's gone. So now we're like, okay, all right, let's figure it out again. And then boom, Dennis and Thad in there. I'm like, okay.
Toronto finished 12th in the Eastern Conference, but RJ Barrett says the team being able to work together this summer and then having a good training camp will make a world of difference.
Nearly 30,000 runners took part in the annual Boston Marathon today. Ethiopia's Sisse Lema won on the men's side, finishing the 40-kilometer race in just over 2 hours. Meanwhile, Kenya's Helen Obiri defended her title to finish in just under 2 hours and 30 minutes. The winners each take home $150,000 from a total prize purse that topped $1 million for the first time.
In Greece, a dress rehearsal was held today at the birthplace of the ancient Olympic Games. A flame was lit one day before the official lighting ceremony for the Paris Games. The flame will be kept as a backup in case cloudy skies derail tomorrow's event. The pageantry at Olympia has been an essential part of every Olympics for nearly 90 years.
Just ahead, Keith Lee has left the city, but he gave us lots to chew on. We look back on the Keith Lee effect and the celebrity food critic's message for Toronto.
Tonight, Donald Trump's historic hush money trial begins.
There is no case, and they've said it.
Jury selection now underway in the former president's criminal case. We'll have that story and more later on CTV National News.
A reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And special greetings to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Food reviewer Keith Lee has left the city, but not without posting a thank you message to his more than 16 million followers on TikTok.
I did not expect this kind of reception. I was blown away the entire time. My mind was blown. Canada, y'all showed up and y'all showed out. Like, I was not expecting it, but I'm thankful, I'm appreciative, I'm grateful from the bottom of my heart. Toronto, I appreciate y'all.
Lee, who reviews random foods on his highly popular social media page, visited 7 local restaurants on the visit, sampling everything from curried goat roti to mac and cheese to baked goods sold out of a backyard shed. Following those reviews, restaurants reported an influx of new diners, dubbed the Keith Lee effect. Lee says this was his first review visit outside of the U.S., and he calls Toronto one of the top 3 cities he's visited on his food tour.
It's nice to hear.
Not a surprise to, Torontonians. We
nice
know
to
we
hear
got a
that,
good
yeah.
scene. Yeah, glad that he noticed.
Yeah, sometimes the weather shows up and shows out.
Just saying, it did today and it will tomorrow, but enjoy it while it lasts because it ends on Wednesday. The good news is we stay relatively close to seasonal, even though the active weather rolls in midweek. But today, beautiful. Tomorrow, even nicer before things start to switch a little bit. But for now, we're holding on to high pressure, keeping the sky nice and clear. Really pleasant conditions to get out, maybe for an evening walk, to go out play basketball. There's a couple of courts in and around the city you can go and have some fun. Temperature-wise, still really mild right across southern Ontario, between about 11 and 18 degrees, a little cooler through Ottawa. Tomorrow, if you want to hit a patio, do it. It's going to be nice. I'll send things back to you guys.
Thank you, Jess. That's it for us, but be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.